In 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and forever changed the way the world communicates. With one sentence, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone," he introduced the iPhone, a product that would transform not just technology, but human behavior itself. But behind that sleek glass and aluminum design lies a hidden story that few people ever hear. The story of hundreds of patents, obscure inventors, and quiet technological revolutions that made the iPhone possible long before Jobs ever held it in his hand. These patents are the true blueprints of the modern world, legal fingerprints of innovation that built the most profitable product in history. The journey of the iPhone didn't begin in Cupertino. It began decades earlier, across countless research labs and universities around the world. The foundation of the iPhone's touchscreen technology, for example, can be traced all the way back to the 1960s. A British engineer named E.A. Johnson was among the first to patent a touchscreen interface, describing how a transparent conductive layer could detect finger contact. 1980s. Companies like IBM and Bell Labs built upon those ideas. IBM even released the Simon Personal Communicator in 1994, a bulky device with a monochrome touchscreen and basic phone capabilities. It was primitive, but it laid the groundwork for what Apple would later perfect. By the early 2000s, Apple had quietly begun experimenting with touchscreen interfaces. A small team led by Jony Ive and Tony Fadell was working on a secret project codenamed Purple. The initial idea wasn't even for a phone, it was for a touchscreen computer, something like an iPad. But as Apple engineers tested prototypes, Jobs realized that the same technology could replace the traditional keypad of a mobile phone. The key to making it work wasn't just hardware, it was patents. In 2005, Apple filed one of its most important patents, touchscreen device, method, and graphical user interface for determining commands by applying heuristics. This patent described how a device could interpret multiple gestures like swiping, pinching, and tapping to control different functions. What made it revolutionary was the introduction of multitouch, the ability to recognize more than one finger at a time. Before that, most touchscreens could only handle a single point of contact. That patent, often called the multi-touch patent, became one of Apple's crown jewels. It's the invisible law that protects the way we scroll, zoom, and navigate on every iPhone. But that was just the beginning. Another critical patent, known as the slide to unlock patent, defined one of the iPhone's most iconic features. The concept seems simple, now slide your finger across the screen to unlock your phone, but when Apple introduced it, it was groundbreaking. The idea was to prevent accidental pocket dialing while keeping the unlocking process natural and intuitive. When Apple launched the first iPhone, Steve Jobs even demonstrated it dramatically, saying, "You had me at slide to unlock." That moment became a signature of Apple's design philosophy, technology so simple, it feels like magic. Behind the scenes, Apple's legal teams were working as hard as its engineers. In 2008, Apple filed for another major patent, the capacitive touch sensor array, which covered how the touchscreen could detect even the lightest human touch through electrical conductivity. This allowed the iPhone to be extremely responsive without requiring a stylus, a feature Jobs famously mocked when he said, "Who wants a stylus? You have 10 of them," referring to our fingers. Of course, not every technology inside the iPhone was invented by Apple. Many of the components that power it, like the lithium-ion battery, the camera sensor, and even the microprocessor architecture, were developed elsewhere. What Apple did masterfully was integrate them under a single ecosystem and protect that integration through a web of patents. The company filed for patents not only on how the technology worked, but also on how it looked and felt. The iPhone's rounded corners, the placement of its icons, even the way apps bounce when you scroll to the end of a list, all of these are patented. Apple understood early on that in the modern world, design is intellectual property. That understanding led to one of the most famous legal battles in tech history, Apple versus Samsung. In 2011, Apple sued Samsung for allegedly copying the iPhone's look and feel, citing several design and utility patents. The case dragged on for years, spanning multiple countries and billions of dollars. At its core was one question: can you patent a rectangle with rounded corners? Apple argued that design simplicity was its greatest innovation, and the courts largely agreed. In 2018, after 7 years of litigation, Samsung agreed to pay Apple $539 million. The ruling set a precedent for how design patents would be treated in the tech industry and reinforced Apple's belief that its patents were the true lifeblood of its success. Another overlooked set of patents centers around the iPhone's camera system. In the earliest versions, Apple worked with outside suppliers, but but it quickly began acquiring companies specializing in computational photography. Over the years, Apple filed patents covering technologies like dual lens systems, portrait mode, optical image stabilization, and machine learning-based image processing. What's interesting is that Apple's patents often combine hardware and software into a single invention, like a patent titled Image Capture using Deep Fusion Neural Networks, which describes how AI can blend multiple exposures to create a single detailed photo. These patents not only improved the iPhone's camera, but also reshaped the entire photography industry. Even features we take for granted today, like Face ID and Siri, are built upon patent portfolios stretching back decades. Apple's facial recognition patent, for example, describes how 3D infrared mapping can identify unique facial features, while Siri's early patents detail natural language processing systems that can understand and respond to human speech. When combined, these technologies turned the iPhone into something more than a phone. It became a personal assistant, a camera, a wallet, and a gateway to the digital world. The business strategy behind Apple's patent empire is just as fascinating. The company is famously secretive about its inventions, often filing patents under the names of individual engineers to disguise what it's working on. Some of these patents never see the light of day. They exist purely to protect ideas for future use or to block competitors from developing similar features. This defensive strategy ensures that even if Apple doesn't use a concept, no one else can either. It's a chess game played in courtrooms and patent offices instead of on store shelves. In total, Apple now holds over 80,000 patents worldwide. Each one represents a tiny fragment of the iPhone's DNA, a piece of the puzzle that made it what it is today. But more importantly, those patents tell a story about how innovation really happens. It's rarely about one genius moment or one visionary person. It's about thousands of small incremental advances, each building on the last, often created by engineers whose names we'll never know. And yet, despite all the innovation, the iPhone's greatest invention may be the system that protects those inventions. Apple's approach to patents has shaped the entire tech ecosystem. Competitors like Google, Huawei, and Xiaomi now follow similar strategies, filing vast numbers of patents each year. In a world where ideas move faster than ever, owning the legal rights to those ideas can be just as valuable as the ideas themselves. Today, as we look toward a future of foldable phones, augmented reality, and wearable tech, Apple continues to file new patents that hint at where it's going next. There are patents for invisible buttons, holographic interfaces, and even smart glasses that could replace the iPhone altogether. Each one is a clue, a glimpse into Apple's next big leap. So the next time you unlock your iPhone or zoom into a photo, remember that what feels like simple technology is actually built upon decades of legal and scientific history. Behind every swipe, every tap, and every click, there's a story of invention and protection. The iPhone isn't just a device, it's a monument to the power of patents, a product of both creativity and control. In the end, the iPhone's success is not just about design or marketing, it's about the unseen architecture of innovation. It's about how human imagination, written into law, built a device that changed the world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden patents behind Apple's innovation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because next week, we'll uncover how AI is quietly running global supply chains and deciding what products appear on your shelves before you even know you want them.